Lesson 39. Nothing to worry about. In this text, you'll hear about a man who worries about nothing. First, listen to the text and answer this question. What was the difference between Bruce's behavior and that of other people? Bruce 和其他人的行为有什么不同？
The rough road across the plain soon became so bad that we tried to get Bruce to drive back to the village we had come from. Even though the road was littered with boulders and pitted with holes, Bruce was not in the least perturbed. Glancing at his map, he informed us that the next village was a mere 20 miles away. It was not that Bruce always underestimated difficulties. He simply had no sense of danger at all. No matter what the conditions were, he believed that a car should be driven as fast as it could possibly go. As we bumped over the dusty track, we swerved to avoid large boulders. The wheels scooped up stones which hammered ominously under the car. We felt sure that sooner or later a stone would rip a hole in our petrol tank or damage the engine. Because of this, we kept looking back, wondering if we were leaving a trail of oil and petrol behind us. What a relief it was when the boulders suddenly disappeared, giving way to a stretch of plain where the only obstacles were clumps of bushes. But there was worse to come. Just ahead of us, there was a huge fissure. In response to renewed pleadings, Bruce stopped. Though we all got out to examine the fissure, he remained in the car. We informed him that the fissure extended for 50 yards and was 2 feet wide and 4 feet deep. Even this had no effect. Bruce went into a low gear and drove at a terrifying speed, keeping the front wheels astride the crack as he followed its zigzag course. Before we had time to worry about what might happen, we were back on the plain again. Bruce consulted the map once more and told us that the village was now only 15 miles away. Our next obstacle was a shallow pool of water about half a mile across. Bruce charged at it, but in the middle the car came to a grinding halt. A yellow light on the dashboard flashed angrily, and Bruce cheerfully announced that there was no oil in the engine.
So what was the difference between Bruce's behavior and that of other people? Right. Bruce wasn't afraid of anything and obviously didn't worry about anything. Rather different from a lot of texts that we have learned, this text starts directly with the dangerous journey they have had, without any introduction or preparation. It first starts with a rough road with boulders and holes, and then a plain with bushes, and then a fissure, later a pool of water where they had to stop. They stopped not because Bruce was worried, but because there was no oil left. Throughout the journey, a sharp contrast between us and Bruce is emphasized. The text starts by telling us how we had tried to get Bruce to get back to the village where we had come from. And when the text ends, they could neither go back nor reach their destination. 课文结束的时候，他们既不能前进，也无处可退了。Right, now let's look at some language points in this text. The rough road across the plain. Rough here means not smooth. 不平的，颠簸的。Look at what rough means in these examples. Farm work has made her hands rough. 农活使她的手粗糙了。When you hear people complain, they often say, I've had a really rough day. Rough here means very difficult, having a lot of problems. 意思是这一天过得真不顺心。 Bruce was not in the least perturbed. Not in the least means he was not at all perturbed. Give you one more example. I don't like traveling in the least, which means I don't like traveling at all. Perturbed means being upset or worried. For example, she was greatly perturbed by the news that her son had been laid off. 听说他的儿子下岗之后，她非常的担忧而且不安。It was not that Bruce always underestimated difficulties. It was not that 其实是用来强调紧跟在后边的陈述的。He simply had no sense of danger at all. 他根本就没有危险的感觉。I'll give you one more example. It is not that I'm not paying attention to you. I'm simply too busy. Using it is not that to emphasize the fact that I'm simply too busy. Underestimate, 低估. For example, never underestimate your enemy. 永远不要低估你的对手。He simply had no sense of danger at all. Sense, feeling, 对什么事情的感觉。我们来看看还可以用 sense 来表达哪些感觉。A keen sense of smell or taste 是嗅觉或味觉灵敏。A good sense of direction or a good sense of rhythm 指的是很好的方向感或者节奏感。We have learned a sense of humor 幽默感 or a sense of urgency 紧迫感 a sense of belonging 一种归属感。As we bumped over the dusty track 在路上颠簸。Look at more examples of bump. The bus bumped along the country road. 公车在乡间的路上颠簸。When we use bump into somebody, we mean to meet somebody by chance. For example, she bumped into one of her students when she was in London. 在伦敦的时候，她恰好撞上她的一个学生。A dusty track. Track means a path, 小路。A mountain track, 山间小路。But when we describe sports event, we can use the word track. 在体育运动中 ，a track event 就是指田径中的竞赛项目。We swerved to avoid large boulders. Swerve means to turn sharply, 忽然转向。For example, the bus driver swerved to avoid hitting the cyclists. 汽车司机猛地转弯，以免碰到骑自行车的人。You can also use swerve to describe things figuratively. For example, he is one of those who won't swerve from his principles. Here, swerve means to suddenly change from his principles. 他不会突然地改变原则。The wheels scooped up stones. Scoop up, 它的本意是捧起。For example, he scooped up a handful of water. 他用手掌捧起水来。还可以用 scoop up 来形容类似的动作。For example, she scooped up the children into her arms and ran away. 猛地捧起孩子，然后逃走。课文中用 scoop up 来形容轮胎搅起石头是一个夸张的说法。Which hammered ominously under the car. Hammer 用作名词的时候是锤子，那么用作动词的时候就是用锤子敲或者敲击。For example, he is hammering the nail into the door. 在朝门上敲钉子。The rain was hammering against the window. 正在敲窗，跟课文中 hammer under the car 意思是一样的。 hammered ominously. Ominously, 不祥的. Of course, here it's used as an exaggeration. 这里呢是有点夸张. Look at this example. The sky looked ominously dark. A stone would rip a hole. Rip 跟 tear 意思相同，撕开 but it emphasizes to tear something violently. Look at two examples. He ripped his shirt on a nail. 他在钉子上挂了衬衫。She ripped the package open eagerly. 急切地撕开包裹。We kept looking back, wondering if we were leaving a trail of oil and petrol behind us. Wondering if, sometimes wondering whether, means not knowing whether. For example, he wondered if or whether he was right to accept this job. 他不知道自己接受这项工作对还是不对。But sometimes we can also use wondering if or whether to show politeness. 它还可以用作一种客气的用语。For example, I was wondering if you'd like to join us for dinner. This is actually an invitation. 这个呢是表达邀请的时候一种客气的说法。Wonder 后边还可以加上其他的特殊疑问词引导的从句。For example, your parents are wondering where you are. Leaving a trail of oil and petrol behind us. 留下这样一条印记。You can leave behind something concrete or something abstract. For example, the incident left a feeling of hostility behind. 这件事情呢，留下了双方的一种敌意。Look at this example. I think I left my keys behind. Here, leave behind means forget to bring with you. 我忘了钥匙了。What a relief it was when the boulders suddenly disappeared. What a relief it was 是一个感叹句，它的正常语序应当是 It was such a relief when the boulders suddenly disappeared. Relief 解脱，松了一口气。Look at more examples. It's a great relief to know that the children are safe. 知道孩子们安全，这真是很大的解脱。She breathed a sigh of relief when she found that she had passed the exam. 当她发现自己考过了之后，轻松地叹了一口气。Giving way to a stretch of plain. Give way to means be replaced by. 由什么替代。For example, sailing ships finally gave way to steamships. 帆船最终被蒸汽船代替。After a while, her anger gave way to depression. 过了一会儿，她由愤怒转为沮丧。A stretch of plain, 一片平原。A stretch of 既可以形容空间上的连续的一片，也可以形容时间上的一段。For example, a stretch of wasteland, 一片荒原。A stretch of 2 weeks, 连续2个星期。The only obstacles were clumps of bushes. Obstacle, 障碍。跟它相搭配的动词经常是 remove obstacles, 扫除障碍，或者 overcome obstacles, 克服障碍。Look at one more example. Fear of change is the greatest obstacle to progress. 对变化的恐惧是进步进程中的最大障碍。In response to renewed pleadings. In response to means as a reaction to. 作为对顾客投诉的反应，公司改进了服务。Renewed pleadings means pleadings made again. Renew often emphasizes to increase after being not so strong. For example, Renewed interest or renewed concern 是说一度并没有这么强的兴趣或者关注，又重新兴起来的。Pleading means begging, but it is more emotional than begging. Extended for 50 yards. Extend 既可以指在空间上的延伸，也可以指在时间上的连续。Look at these examples. The Sahara Desert extends for miles. 这里是指空间上的延续。The sandstorm extended for almost a week. 沙尘暴持续了几乎1个星期，时间上的延续。Keeping the front wheels astride the crack. 把车轮放在裂缝的两边。Astride 横跨。Look at this example. He was sitting astride his new motorbike. 他横跨着坐在新买的摩托车上。The city lies astride the river. 这个城市横跨这条江。Followed its zigzag course. Course here means the route. 车走的路线。Zigzag course 是指的之字形或者是 W 型的 course。We can also use course figuratively, 是指生活的道路、轨迹。For example, he changed the course of my life. 他改变了我的生活道路。About half a mile across. Across here means wide, 来表示宽度。For example, at its widest point, the river is 2 kilometers across. 在最宽的地方，这条河有2公里宽。Bruce charged at it. Charge means attack. 它最本来的意思是向什么进攻。For example, he drew his sword and charged at the enemy. 抽出剑来向敌人刺去。But here, charged at it means rushed at top speed at it. Give you one more example. When the bell rang, the school children charged out of the classroom. 铃声一响，孩子们就冲出教室。The car came to a grinding halt. Come to a halt. 经常还加上 grinding 这个形容词，意思是陷入停滞。For example, the traffic came to a halt as the light turned red. 一变红灯，整个交通都停滞下来。The industry came to a grinding halt because of fuel shortage. 因为燃料短缺，工业陷入停滞状态。Bruce cheerfully announced. Cheerfully, 高高兴兴的。我们知道 happily 也是高兴的意思 ，but cheerfully means more spontaneous than happily, and it emphasizes a spirited happiness. 兴高采烈的。For example, he walked down the road whistling cheerfully. 高高兴兴地吹着口哨。最后，我们来看看这篇课文是如何在语言风格上生动地描述了这个危险的旅程和 Bruce 这个无所畏惧的人的。首先，课文中使用了几处用引申义的动词。The wheels scooped up stones, 像捧起石头一样。Which hammered under the car, 用 hammer 来强调他们敲击的猛烈。Bruce charged at it, 像对敌人发起进攻一样朝目标冲去。除此之外，还使用了 adverbs and adjectives in order to exaggerate. Which hammered ominously under the car. Ominously because we felt worried. At a terrifying speed. Terrifying because we were frightened. Flashed angrily. Angrily 这里呢不仅是夸张，而且是一种拟人，来形容闪光的刺眼。Finally, let's come back to the text itself. The title of this text is nothing to worry about. And it tells us about a man who worries about nothing. And we, who traveled together with Bruce, were worried to death. 同样的经历中，不同的人会有不同的感受，这个我们在生活中都非常熟悉。也可能是因为我们天生的气质就不太相同。In natural dispositions, some of us were born to be carefree, while some of us were born to be more nervous and anxious. As a result, in terms of behavior, some of us tend to be rash, and some of us tend to be cautious. 再说得深一点 in terms of understanding life, some of us tend to be optimistic, and some tend to be pessimistic. 人的性格呢，有时也会跟驾驶的方式有一些关联。我们当然很容易想到 a careful person makes a good driver, while a careless person makes a poor driver. But sometimes there are some strange connections. For example, women sometimes tend to drive more wildly than men. Maybe in that case, driving serves as an outlet for our natural disposition. Okay, so much on the topic of our dispositions and driving. Bye for now.